great education for your team. Where this round is your first prize, and either way, including when you look forward to the fight to get in the and by that work to be about okay. Madam Speaker, please call.
The bill before the House today is that this House will tie executive compensation to reform. There is no bonus for failure. I would like to invite the Prime Minister to deliver his introductory address in the bill.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So, the resolution before the House today is that the Canadian government believes that all corporate executives of publicly traded Canadian corporations should have compensation tied to performance. As such, there is no bonus for failure. And in this instance, we would define this entire bonus system as the amount of money given in addition to an executive's base salary. So this being said, I would like to go into first discussing our goals by this resolution, and then going into three main points why this resolution should stand. Our goal in this resolution, Madam Speaker, is to enhance corporate accountability, to raise the equity between the employable classes, a greater protection for shareholders, and finally, as a deterrent for frivolous corporate spending by executives. In so doing, we look at three main points why this should stand. The first point is really, what is the purpose of an executive, Madam Speaker? The second point will be the meritocracy in which we live, and the last point will be the establishment of better business practices through this resolution. So, looking now at my first point, the purpose of an executive. Well, the purpose of an executive, Madam Speaker, is essentially to drive the company. They're the leader of this corporation, and their purpose is to increase the value to the corporation and the shareholders at large. This is in fact called fiduciary duty. And this fiduciary duty actually exists irrespective of whatever economic climate in which they live. I mean, a perfect example of this, Madam Speaker, is Larry Page, who is actually an executive of Google. Well, the fact of the matter is that when you look to Larry Page, you see that despite the downturns in the economy of late, Madam Speaker, despite any other alterations in the economy, Google and phones related to Google have actually still remained strong, Madam Speaker. I mean, does this not speak to a paragon of the executive? What exactly an executive is meant to stand for? So, looking now to my next point, this idea of the meritocracy. So, I mean, Madam Speaker, let me talk to exactly what happens when one gets hired by a company. You are looking at their education, what they've done in the past, their history, essentially all these competencies that define them and define what they are going to make of the company once they are put at what is essentially the company's helm. This is called their ability for merit. And an easy example of this, Madam Speaker, is Bill Gates. Bill Gates put in over 10,000 hours of programming practice into building his skills that eventually led to the establishment of Microsoft Corporation. And as such, based upon this merit, based upon his skill set, he is now enjoying the fruits of his labor, Madam Speaker, in terms of, the wealth and compensation that he receives from Microsoft, has received from Microsoft, and continues to receive from Microsoft. I mean, he did this, Madam Speaker, through college, and even after dropping out of college. This speaks to the merit of the person in general. It speaks to the merit of the executive. And this is a merit that we believe should stand through all executive spheres. I'll take your point now.
Would you not believe that in growing a company like Microsoft, you experienced some failures along the way, and that you shouldn't have been chastised for them because the merit transcends the individual failure?
While I would say that failures in the past are a driving force, the fact of the matter is that failure is merely a driver for future performance, Madam Speaker. Failures are seen to stand as a motivating factor, and likewise, nothing can be considered a failure without an appropriate response. I mean, I wouldn't call it a punishment, Madam Speaker, I would call it a natural response to a certain situation. If a person does something wrong, they shouldn't be granted more bonuses, more money, given more gains for doing something incorrectly. They should learn from their mistake, Madam Speaker, learn to correct their mistake. And the only way to learn from this is by having a personal effect upon themselves, by having an effect that they feel, not that it's felt by a myriad of other people, irrespective of the mistake that is being made, Madam Speaker. So with this being said, I would like to go into, my third and final point here, which is this aspect of better business practices. So let's look at any corporation really, Madam Speaker. I mean, you're looking at a corporation wherein the executives now, under this resolution, have their compensation, their money, their personal wealth, now tied into the activities of the corporation, now tied directly into what the corporation is doing and the way in which it's operational. As long as the corporation continues to stay afloat, i.e. they continue to do their job, Madam Speaker, as long as the corporation continues to stay afloat and do its job, and they do their job well, they get their respective bonus. They get the associated bonus. They get what is called a reward for doing well, as opposed to a reward for failing, which is what side opposition would like to have. Sorry, not this time. So, I mean, this being said, I mean, even if we look at the establishment of better business practices, let's take a logical extension of this, Madam Speaker. Let's look towards the economy as a whole. So what we're doing here, Madam Speaker, is we are raising the standards of the economy. We are raising a situation where we are motivating businesses to create these better business practices, to raise to a higher standard, and thus increase the standard of the Canadian economy as a whole. So, I mean, for all these reasons, the purpose of an executive, meritocracy, and better business practices, we strongly propose. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
We, the opposition, firmly oppose the motion that executive bonuses should, that there should be no bonus for failure. And the reason for that, the reason which we will now outline. But before that, I'd like to lay out an agenda of the points that we will raise. First idea is about risk taking, flowing into how the ethics of this might roll out if we give no bonuses for negative performance. Externalities which might not have been in control of an executive, the retention of top talent, time frame during which success occurs, and the definition of performance in various industries, and the sources by which we define success. Now, to begin, risk-taking and key developments. It is a well-known fact, Madam Speaker, that to develop, to move ahead, to achieve success, one needs to innovate, and and the opposition believes that for every success, that every success came after failure. No one runs without falling first. And the same applies to a corporation. A failure which is not rewarded kills the risk-taking basis of R&D and innovation. Is this government wishing for stunted economic growth and a lack of R&D in the Canadian economy? I believe that this is a very myopic view. Now, on top of that, they said we should not give more bonuses for bad performances. We do not say you give more bonuses, we say you give no bonuses. You should maybe perhaps lower it, but giving no bonuses is actually counterproductive. I'll take your point.
So, I mean, you're saying, essentially, what we're saying is that studies have shown that getting a free ride, easy will actually increases stagnation, not only of a person, but of a corporation itself. If you never fell, you'd never have gotten hurt, and you would never have learned how better to run. I mean, how are we disincentivizing innovation when failure is the hallmark of what creates new innovation, Madam Speaker?
What I believe they fail to realize is that if you fall down, and your father doesn't come give you a pat on the back, you're not ready to run, come up and run again. Moving on to the idea of ethics. It is an important point to consider that when you solely give positive outcomes and a reward, you give the incentive for corporations to start keeping books, perhaps hide their liabilities. And this might create a financial climate in which there are a lot of financial scandals circulating, which will create market misinformation. This again stunts economic growth and development, and therefore perpetuates a climate which is poisonous to economic growth. Now, moving ahead, not right now. Now, moving ahead to the point of externalities. It is important to realize that in this macroeconomic world, the complete corporation profits are not solely in the hands of executives. There's systemic issues we need to realize, which are beyond the control of executives. And to ostracize someone for an action that was not in their control is nothing more than injustice. It's simply not fair. On top of that, we have to realize this. When a corporation faces failure, it needs someone to come and pick it back up. If you give no bonuses, I do not believe that executives are going to stay with that corporation. You need the top talent there to bring that corporation out of the red and back into the black. And therefore, we believe that giving no bonuses hurts economic growth. Now, aside government per se, we need to stop using money as an incentive and give more value to personal attachment. But I believe labor markets work on the wage rate, and to create an emotional attachment factor is simply a preposterous argument that cannot stand.
You talked about bringing the top talent into a corporation, but I mean, if the actions of the executive damage the corporation, wouldn't you say you failed to hire the top talent?
I would like to raise the point that sometimes even Gordon Ramsay makes a souffle that does not rise, but that does not mean we believe different corporations behave differently. Sometimes in the mining sector, you need to wait 10 years before you strike oil. Sometimes in the technology sector, you need 3 years of investment before you can turn to the green. And therefore, to justify in the first 3 years, you give them no bonuses is not a correct idea and should not be put forward by this House. We believe the government is in no place to sit in its ivory tower and go ahead and say, give past a black and white motion and say, no bonus if you do not turn a profit. And therefore, we are proud to oppose this motion.
Thank you, Member of the Opposition for speaking by Cabinet Minister to review the speech by Government. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, what I'd like to do today for you is to bring forth 2 more constructive points as to why this resolution should stand, and then further go on to refute some of the points that our opposition made today. Now, these 2 points that we believe strongly stand in our favor are the accountability and the issue with the status quo, and secondly, what is best for society as a whole. So let's first take a look at the issue of accountability and what actually exists in the status quo today. So let's take a look at the goal of a corporation and how exactly a corporation best serves society, how it best serves its employees and its shareholders. Now, clearly there's a problem because this is happening in certain companies, and here's an example. So our opposition brought up an example of hugging the bus. So let's take Enron, for example, who is famously known for hugging the bus. Now, don't you think, Madam Speaker, that having more key performance indicators and more performance goals would have drawn more scrutiny to their performance as a company? Don't you think that this would have led to a faster discovery of them cooking the books in the first place? Furthermore, like I said, we have to take a look at what best serves the employees and what serves the values of the corporation in itself. So say, for example, the board of directors or the shareholders vote in a new project that they believe the executives should enact. And this project will go on to support a company's CSR initiatives, for example. Now, this isn't exactly directly tied to profit at first glance, but really it does enhance the reputation of the company, and it enhances the goals of the company. So how this would best serve the goals of the company is that if there are performance goals tied to these projects, managers are now held accountable for the performance of these projects. And again, if they would not have done so in the first place because they would have been so focused on profit, performance goals aren't solely focused on profit, Madam Speaker. So with the creation of such projects, they would be more inclined to serve these values and serve the, for example, employees if the project is related to work-life balance, for example, of the organization. Yes.
Are you suggesting that there's no possible way for a company to fail outside of performance malfunctions and bad performance of investment? There's no externality that could possibly affect a company in a negative way?
So my answer to that let me ask you a question. If there are externalities and there is a crisis, a financial crisis right now, should executives suddenly be allowed to let their company fail? So, with these performance goals, they would be held more accountable to the performance of their company. What we're saying is that we shouldn't hold them liable for certain things that aren't tied to the values and goals of the company. So no, thank you at this time. So for the issues of accountability, this is one reason as to why the resolution should stand. The second reason is what is best for society. So we have to take a look at what is equitable between the employees and the employer. We recognize that there is a power imbalance between the employees and the employer, and we strongly believe that this resolution would go on to alleviate this power imbalance by making sure the executives are held accountable to the same goals that the employees are held accountable to. The same way that the employees are expected to do their job, the job of an executive is to lead the performance of a company. Moreover, how do we take a look at the hiring process? The hiring process is based on competency, like my partner mentioned. And so if we spend money on the hiring process to make sure that we hire the right employee with the right talent, this talent is expected to add value to an organization. So shouldn't we expect that compensation be done in the same way?
How do you justify not compensating someone who's adding tremendous value to help a company come out of a downturn if you don't compensate them? There's no way for a company to come out of something terrible if they don't have the skills. And to hire someone with skills, they need to be trained and educated. Don't you agree?
So I don't see how training and education align here with what we're actually discussing today and the resolution of the board. Okay, now I'll go directly to go on to review some of the points that our opposition just brought up, and I'll start with the point that they believe that that companies should be encouraged to innovate, and that they should be encouraged to take risks, and that they should be penalized for having taken those risks. Now, again, like I mentioned as an answer to that POI that our opposition asked, don't you think that we should reward success? What our opposition is suggesting is that we should reward success. So isn't success what creates innovation in the first place? Our opposition also argues that no bonuses is counterproductive. So we would argue that meeting goals is equal to productivity within an organization. Moreover, our opposition brought up the point of ethics, and I believe that I strongly address that point with my example of Enron. The next point was the point of externalities and how companies should be held liable to the performance of their company. Executives should be held liable for the performance of their company. But again, like I mentioned, even in the time of financial crisis, executives should be doing their job, and their job entails the performance of an organization. The next point that they brought up is the issue of retention and talent retention. And this, again, like I mentioned, the same way that we spend money on our hiring process to make sure that we hire the right talent and to add value to our organization, we should be taking a look at our compensation policies to make sure that they also add value to our organization. Moreover, I'd like to mention that they talked about a time frame period of performance goals. They mentioned how executives sit in their ivory tower, they paint this lovely little picture for us, and they say that if it takes 3 years to find an oil well to drill into, well, the executives will be penalized for this. But I ask you, Madam Speaker, wouldn't performance goals have taken account of this in the first place? They also mentioned that they would address the sources of success, but they never really went on to elaborate. So I'm just going to go on to rebuild some of my points here, in that we have to take a look at the purpose of an executive within a company in itself, the meritocracy that we live in, and the fact that this resolution would support the bettering of business practices within our society. Now, firstly, the purpose of an executive. Again, like my partner has mentioned, the purpose of an executive is to direct its employees towards the success of the company. And so the performance goals will be achieved by including these performance-related bonuses. Secondly, for reasons of meritocracy, the bettering of business practices, the solving of the issue of accountability, and looking at what is best for society, my partner and I, my team and I, strongly, proudly to
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to begin with a brief refutation and then move on to two constructive points. My refutation begins with this notion that the government brought up about accountability and the usage of key performance indicators and the usage of just piling on. What it seems that the government is suggesting is to pile on key performance indicators and pile on and rank executives based on these key performance indicators. What we're trying to suggest is that more key performance indicators, besides many of them being ambiguous and terribly difficult to quantify, just allow for more opportunities for managers to put a stranglehold on operations and meet these benchmarks to collect a paycheck. The internal profit motive, Madam Speaker, is still strong, no matter how many key performance indicators are put in place. I also like to point out that State government has not given us a definition, a strong definition of what performance actually is. It's very ambiguous, and ambiguity is a theme that is going to come up a lot in this debate. What is success? What is failure? It's ambiguous. Finally, it is not that we feel that we shouldn't reward success. Of course we should reward success. But what we're trying to say is that we shouldn't necessarily annihilate and demonize for failure. And I'll take your point now before I move on to my construction.
Right, well, you said that the look to profit is still prevalent in the corporate sphere, so don't you see that tying the compensation above their base salary of an executive to the furtherance of the company, to their profit, is inherently required for executive performance?
As you will see, Honorable Prime Minister, in my constructive points, this notion of profit success is again following the theme, an ambiguous one. So why do you ask, Madam Speaker, that we shouldn't annihilate for failure? Well, what does success look like? Is it tangible? Is it instant? Where is the line? And is there a line, an easily visible line, that truly separates success and failure? These are before this House today to show, Madam Speaker, that the notion of success, and following that, the notion of failure, and the relative stardom that this notion of success entails, is one fraught with ambiguity. Let's look at success in a few different contexts. So first of all, we have financial success, i.e., as my honorable colleague mentioned, profit and loss. Now, it's quite utopian of the government to suggest that book profits equate to success. The accounting protocols that underlie these figures are merely an interpretation of business performance. And in the past decade alone, we've seen the danger of equating book profit and other book figures with success. Was Enron, I'll take your point in a moment, not now, thank you. Was Enron truly successful before the scandal broke? What about WorldCom, Madam Speaker? The fact of the matter is that accounting standards make it very easy to show success. Starbucks, for instance, have recently come under fire in the United Kingdom for moving profits, around its multinational division and its different business units, showing losses in what would technically be profitable sectors for tax and other purposes. Thus, we bring up, again, this notion, this theme of ambiguity. What really is success as defined by profit? Is it truly a business being successful, or is it somebody sitting in their office and making it successful on paper? Yes,
so essentially you're saying that there are some companies out there who really don't define corporate success as turning a profit. They might define it by something else. And moreover, that this resolution shouldn't stand because some corporations that are against the law define success because they do illegal things. I mean, I'm not really seeing how that actually applies to anything.
What I'm merely suggesting is that it is very easy to show success in different lights. It's very easy to paint the picture of success. And so tying compensation to success, again, opens up the opportunity for success to be created falsely. Let's consider the time context. The old adage goes that Rome wasn't built in a day. And Madam Speaker, we tend to agree. The path to success does not begin in paradise. Do we demonize a visionary with a long-term plan for short-term financial failures? Do we blame them for the initial operational hiccups? Not now, thank you. For the initial operational hiccups that are the mark of organizations and industries that are in transition or in their infancy? The incentive to the visionary, Madam Speaker, in this case, is nil. And our economic development hits a standstill. On the opposite side, how do you quantify and remunerate long-term success, not now, thank you, in the short term? Holding the notion that long-term success is arguably the goal of any organization. Again, Madam Speaker, it's fraught with ambiguity. It is for these reasons, the reason that success is easily manipulated and difficult to fix in the domain of time, that we are proud to oppose.
government's final constructive address.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Now with my 7-minute speech, I'm going to address a few issues. I'm going to talk about two more constructive issues furthering side government's case, and then go on to refute each and everything that side opposition came up here and talked about, and then rebuild some of my partner's points, and talk about why all of our points still stand in this resolution, and why this resolution must and will pass. All right, I'm going to talk about a couple of things. First of all, what's best for the corporation, and my partner touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to go a little bit more into it, and then I'm going to talk about why this resolution actually drives competition. And this is actually sort of an obvious point, but I'm going to get into it anyway. So, what's best for the corporation, Madam Speaker? Now, my partner talked about the issue of accountability, because currently there are many negative ramifications of the current situation, right? Currently, corporate executives can do whatever they want, whenever they want, without really taking much of the hit, right? So it is mostly the shareholders, it is mostly all of the employees that have all these negative ramifications that are attached to it. Yet the executives of the corporation themselves who receive all these bonuses still can sleep at night without really caring. And this is seen as a problem on side government. This is a problem that we want to address. And passing this resolution will address this problem, not at this moment. The amount of power, Madam Speaker, that these executives have much more of an effect on the shareholders, the employees, and millions of other stakeholders in this thing. What does passing this resolution really mean? It means greater equity within a company, greater competency within a company, greater motivation within a company, and lastly, greater morale. And I'm going to talk about this in a little bit further. Now, executives will be hired based on their competency to lead, their competency to drive a company forward, instead of just their ability to sit in a chair and look good as a corporation. This is not something that we see. We need leaders to lead these corporations, not just get paid their Christmas check or their annual salary, whatever they do, by doing absolutely nothing. Right? They will not and should not be able to hide behind this corporate veil. My partner also mentioned the issues of equity and morale. Now, this resolution sort of aims to level the playing field in many ways, not just in terms of what is rewarded and punished, but it's also seen by all the employees, right? All these employees, how would employees feel, for example, if they know that their boss, if they do anything to screw up and the employee would take the hit? If they do anything to screw up, the employee in fact would get fired, or the employee would not get a certain bonus. Yet the boss goes home and spends $1 million on my Ferrari. We don't see this as something that's good outside government, and this is the problem that we want to address. And not only does it solve this issue, but it boosts morale within the company. And this boosting morale is best for the corporation as a whole. Not only this, I'm going to talk about my second point about how to drive competition. Not just internal competition, Madam Speaker, but external competition. Now, if many competitors are okay, before I get into that, I'll this point.
You said about boosting morale. Can you please tell me which executive's morale will get boosted when
I'm
he
not
gets
talking
no
about
bonus?
executive morale, I'm talking about employee morale, right? It is the employees that see the fact that the executives who have so much power, and so much power not only over the company, but over the company that essentially affects the employee himself. It is this that they see that when they, after passing the resolution, they would be not rewarded for doing terrible things. No, thank you. Now, innovation, Madam Speaker, requires those who perform above and beyond. I think it's safe to say that my partner brought up many examples like Bill Gates, even Steve Jobs. I mean, all of these things, they're very innovative people, and because they were motivated and they went above and beyond what is required in a leader. And this is what we're striving to aim. This is what we aim to strive for. By passing this resolution just encourages more people like that to actually get ahead and push the company forward. I mean, under the current system, there really isn't any monetary incentive for an executive to do anything else instead of this company, and rake in all these benefits. But passing the resolution now provides an incentive for a company, not just for the current well-being of the company, but for the future well-being. And this is what we aim to strive for: the future well-being of the internal competition within the company. Now, there's two types of competition. I said there's internal and external. So not only does it drive internal competition, now you have a lot of these executives actually fighting to drive the company forward, who actually want to make a difference in the company because there's a personal gain here. When all of a sudden you have the company itself, in and of itself, being more competitive on the global scale. And this is something that we see obviously as a good thing for all business students who know what competition is, right? So that's a little bit of rebuttal and came up here. I mean, besides government, aside of this, we came up here and talked about the word ethics. Now, Now they said it was a point, but really they just said the word ethics, right? They never really said anything to link us to why what we're doing is so unethical. My partner already talked about how leveling the playing field is seen as ethical. Boosting morale for a company is seen as ethical. Like allowing a corporation allowing an executive to still receive a bonus after doing something completely terrible and essentially doing something that has negative ramifications not just on himself but the entire company as a whole. Rewarding that is unethical. Yes.
Doesn't this resolution only operate under the assumption that executives do bad things for their companies, that failure is a direct result of bad actions by executives?
Right. Failure is a result of bad actions.
Is that the only sort of
The second point that side government talked about was how corporations need people to pick them up, right? Corporations need people to nurse them back to health. They need as they quote, their daddy to pet them when they fall, right? Give them a little band-aid. I mean, do we want people like that to be leaders of corporations? Not really. These people should be leaders in and of themselves. They are the ones that are the people that are driving this company, right? We agree corporations need to have these leading executives, and we've already showed you why this resolution gets those leading executives and how it encourages those leading executives to lead even more than they already do. Now, they talked about Gordon Ramsay, right? And how they said, oh, Gordon Ramsay probably made 2 plays that didn't even arrive. Does that give him the right to still be able to sell that 2 plays to $1 million paying customer? No, it doesn't. Inside government is that we wanted to throw out that 2 play and make a new one. This sort of logic is the exact same mentality that we are hoping to avoid inside government. Gordon Ramsay might be a famous chef, but that doesn't give him the right to not just get away with failure, but to be rewarded for it. The last point that they brought up was about, they sort of give us an English lesson on the different types of success. There's financial success, there's whatever. So, Madam Speaker, on-site government, we are talking about success in terms of having better scrutiny on these employees, driving them for success, whatever they believe that success for the company is. Because whatever it is, that's what we stand for. We stand for a successful company for the reasons of meritocracy that was still not trust, that was still not addressed by side government, for the reasons of how it's best for society, how these people should be accountable, and for the reasons that it's best for the corporation and draft competition, we proudly support.
No bonus for failure means that if there is failure, there is no bonus. I just want to agree that that is an absolute. So, in the terms of the motion, we have the House believes that executive compensation should be tied to performance, and there is no bonus for failure. But as we all know in business, performance and failure are not absolute. So you can't have an absolute to something that's not absolute. If we start with performance, okay? So we for this debate, we ran the assumption that if a company is doing poorly, it's because people are not performing. And I'd like to just, think about some examples that have happened, and that we can, look at that and say, oh, maybe executives not performing isn't the only thing that can happen. Maybe there's other things that happen in the world, in the economy, that maybe affect the performance of the company. So let's look at softwood lumber. I'll put them in a moment. So this is an industry that was thriving. It was one of the largest contributors to Ontario GDP, and with the housing collapse in the United States, the demand for the product was gone. These executives were creating the best companies in the province, and overnight their business was gone. Is that something they can control? Should they not be someone who was driving such a successful company to stay with it, who knows its intricacies, to figure out how to work within the new environment that it's in to become successful again? If you put someone new in who doesn't understand how to negotiate with three governments, who doesn't understand the intricacies and all the disputes that came before, how on earth are they supposed to bring the industry out of the rubble if there's no incentive?
Okay, so I just want to look back for a moment to your entire thing on how performance and failure are absolute, are not absolute. Well, I believe you want to look at the definition of the realm. We indicated that fiduciary duty is a prevalent aspect of every executive, and the fiduciary duty is towards the success of the company and the profit of its shareholders. I'm pretty sure that's a pretty definite, definition of what failure means.
I'm glad you said that because the fiduciary aspect of failure is my next point. So, failure as in profit loss. If you make a profit, you are a success, and if you lose money, you are a failure. So, that's under that definition. Every single mining company, oil extraction company, tech company who doesn't make a profit in their first few years of development, which are arguably the most crucial to their long-term success, are failures. That those executives shouldn't be compensated for building the foundation of what will become in 20 years our most successful corporation, that those are failures, then the argument,
So they're not making a profit, and no money is coming into the corporation. Where exactly is all this bonus paycheck coming from?
I'm so because how these companies are funded is by consumer confidence. Investors invest in extraction companies, in research and development, in tech companies before they turn a profit because they believe in the future potential of the industry. Mining companies don't stand there and say, oh, there's gold here, and tomorrow are selling gold. People, they review the geography, they look at what's happened, and they know that, once they build these mines, there will be success. So, yes, in the initial profit loss, it is a failure. But people and investors are smart enough to know that profit and loss isn't the only thing to look at, and the government needs to address that, and we need to be just as smart as the average investor. As we are moving to the end of my argument, I'd just like to refute some of the things the Prime Minister is going to be saying when he comes back up here to tell you that money is the only objective. And every time you hear that, you can think about, okay, but maybe not. Mark Zuckerberg, when he created Facebook, wasn't making money, but no one's going to call him a failure. I mean, that's just not something that we can argue. So we're going to start with what the Prime Minister says the purpose. The purpose is to drive the company and increase value. I don't think that anyone can argue that at the beginning of a tech company or research and development, cancer research, that these people, because they're not making a profit, are failures. So failure defines future success. Exactly. They don't stop researching for cancer treatments because they didn't get it the first time. They don't stop making drugs because it doesn't cure it the first time. That's not what happens. They keep working for better and new, and that's why they're paid, because they're the only ones that are able to get that better and new. I think I've covered we need to define what success and failure is, and the fact that the government in its initial motion did not define failure and did not define performance is just showing how weak this argument really is on a fundamental level. Secondly, I'd like to go over to the Cabinet Minister who said his point was accountability. So, they need to be chastised when they lose money. Well, I think as I've already stated, you can lose money for other reasons than your own behavior. I mean, I think this operates under the assumption that, they say executives should not be allowed to let their company fail. That was their exact wording. They should not be allowed to let their company fail. Which executive sits in his office and says, yeah, this is going wrong, I can fix it, but I'm going to allow it to fail. The best for society was an interesting argument that, it's best for a single day and things go wrong. If things go wrong and you punish them and you take away their bonus and you say, yeah, you did this wrong, so that erases every other thing you've ever done right, and you need to learn a lesson from this. When are they ever going to take a risk in the future? How is innovation or moving forward in the economy ever going to happen? The final issue I would like to talk about, which I think is the most, it's interesting, but I think we're going to get to the bottom of it, is the amount of power. And that's something that the Prime Minister is going to come in and he's going to tell you, this is in the best interest of companies, this is in the best interest of people working at the companies, this is in the best interest of society. And that's because they have power. In their definition, they define corporation as a publicly traded company. Publicly traded companies have boards of directors and have shareholders who elect them. If you're electing someone, you're not going to elect someone who's stealing from you. You're not going to elect someone who's purposely allowing you to fail. You're going to elect the best person you think is going to bring you into the future. So this idea that they have so much power and that they're abusing it is contrary to the definition you provided, that they're publicly traded and they're operating in the best interest of their shareholders and board of directors. I think the only thing really left to say is, profit and loss, that's failure, and they should be chastised for not doing well. And if they're not doing well, they need an incentive to do better. But as we've seen in the world we live in today, nothing is black and white. And presenting a black and white notion for something as versatile as business and industry today, I think it's completely unfounded and not founded. None of the arguments that are founded. So for those reasons, everything I've stated and the ambiguity of the notion itself, as well as the term in the definition, as well as the fact that the opposition will agree that monetary things are not the only solution to failure, this motion shall not stand, and we firmly oppose it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. So, side opposition has taken a very interesting view of this entire debate. And a lot of it seems to stand upon the crux that without this bonus, without this addition to their base salary, which is already exorbitant, these executives will somehow not be able to survive. They'll be in such a terrible, egregious circumstance just because they don't get their annual bonus and, their retreat in Cancun. That's the position that side opposition has taken. But what we really look to in this round is a couple of themes. The first theme is being, what is the hallmark and the purpose of a successful executive? And we believe, and the second aspect will be, what is the social gain? Which is something that side opposition kind of flippantly talks about, but never really looked to. And in fact, never really looked to how our resolution does not stand towards our initially outlined goals. Looking at the first thing, this idea of what a successful executive is and what they do. We talk about fiduciary duty. The idea that they are essentially servants of the company. They are intended to look to the company and look to the amelioration of the company, look to gain not only financially, but also in the myriad other value aspects that come into play. My partners here talk about ideas such as other responsibilities and other key performance evaluators beyond simple money. All of these are involved within the fiduciary duty. And if side opposition had any real business knowledge, they would actually understand what the definition of fiduciary duty is by large. It is defined by a publicly traded company. And we just assume that as you're having a business debate, standard business aspects would be brought into play. And the fact of the matter is that if a company is failing, then they are not successful. Success and failure are absolutely absolutes. They're understood. And looking to this, they're talking about what is really a successful executive. Side opposition looks at it like you would never elect someone to fail, someone who thought they could fail. And that in investor competency and investor confidence would allow these people to be paid even if they're not turning a profit. Well, the problem here comes in when investors are not confident when a company elects an incompetent executive. Where is the investor confidence here, Madam Speaker? So, now that we've talked about what a successful executive really is under this resolution, and how if you're not a successful executive, you should not be rewarded for incompetence, I think we can now talk to, the second theme, which never really came up, which never really was properly addressed in the round, and that is the idea of social gain. See, side opposition never really looked to the equity between the employer and the employee, and another aspect, which is the economics of the situation, Madam Speaker. We talked about how this increases morale, because the employees know that they are not the first people on the firing line in the event that a problem arises. Executives are elected to lead a company irrespective of the economic climate. If they are not able to be reactive to a situation, then they are an incompetent executive, Madam Speaker, and therefore should not be better business practices. Make these executives want to look to corporate gain. And the fact of the matter is that they never addressed those raised standards of corporate practice. They never looked at how the socio-economical gain combines with the idea of a successful executive to allow this resolution to strongly be proposed. Thank you very much.